Hello, and happy Wednesday, everybody. Welcome to Tilted Bench. I'm your host, Nathan Hill. Happy to have Katelyn Richards with me today for episode 3. The show is about coaching. We talk to coaches to find out why coaching is important, how it works. Katelyn, welcome to the show. How are you today?
I am doing so well. I'm so excited to be here. Thanks for having me, Nathan.
You're very welcome. I'm excited too. I mean, the topic that you've got for us to talk about today is, I feel like, one that pretty much everybody is probably going to connect with, like content creation, career branding. This is big stuff. I wonder if you could start us off by telling us a little bit about what exactly it is that you do and why the title of today's episode is important.
Yes, absolutely. So I am a former recruiter, talent acquisition specialist turned career coach. And in my years of doing career coaching, something that I have come to be extremely passionate about is building a personal brand and content creation for the sake of giving yourself options when it comes to your career and being able to really attract the types of opportunities or companies or clients, whatever it might be, that you are looking for as you dream big about what it is you really want in your career. And so, I used to kind of be more of a traditional career coach, and now I have kind of pivoted slightly to really just leaning in hard on the content creation front on LinkedIn.
I love it. And I love that Henrietta remarked about how excited you are. It's something to be excited about. I'm glad you're excited too.
Yes.
It's funny. I was telling Kinga, my wife, I was telling her last night, I'm like, Katelyn's got such good energy. I know that, she's going to be excited when we get on the show. I know there's going to be a lot of positive energy here around this, which I'm happy to have. Do you have, tell me about, like, how did you end up deciding that this is the right thing for you to do? What was your own journey that got you here?
Yeah, into coaching in general. Essentially, my journey into coaching stemmed from the pandemic. Like so many other recruiters and talent acquisition specialists, I was let go in the midst of the pandemic. And what that did is it really forced me to kind of have to take a step back and really reflect on my own career and my own journey and what is it that I really wanted. And I worked with a career coach myself in the midst of that journey, who at one point looked at me and said, have you thought about career coaching? And then, just kind of based on my own story and, my own strengths and the things that I really value, I was like, oh, and it was such a light bulb moment for me in terms of, like, this is a really great way to kind of combine my past experience and still get to help this audience of people that I had been hanging out with, for 5+ years, job seekers, right? And be able to pull back the curtain for them. And so that was really kind of my big shift into coaching, was this light bulb moment working with a career coach myself. And I've never looked back since. I always say I have the best job in the world, and I just want everyone else to get to feel that way about their job.
That's awesome. Talk about paying it forward, right? Like you receive this kind of gift of guidance from someone, and now you can turn around and do that same thing. We've got some more people that have joined us. Hey, Kinga. Hey, Paul. Hi, I'm glad you made it. When I talk to a lot of coaches, one thing that I find is kind of a repeated theme is that coaches need their own coaches. Like, coaches need help from other coaches to help them find their own path.
Yes.
And it seems to be a common theme too with kind of passing this energy on, right? Like, you get that help, and then it kind of makes you want to help other people too, right?
Yes, 1,000%. I mean, I think good coaches understand that we all need good coaching, right? I always say I think everyone should have a coach and a therapist. I just think that those are two valuable people in relationships that really just help us do that inner work and provide us with practical and tangible ways to move ourselves forward in life, obviously in different ways, right, in both of those categories. But I am a huge proponent of being the recipient of coaching and then allowing that then, right, to, like you named, pay it forward with those that then I get the privilege of walking with and coaching myself.
Definitely. I have to pause for a second and thank Trevor. It was Trevor who told me after last week's show how to turn on captions, because you have to like set this up a certain
Yes.
go up. So I'm glad that you guys can see captions if you need them. I know sometimes it's easier to have the sound off and watch the captions. So thank you, Trevor, for showing me how to do that. And I love that you just pointed out, Katelyn, kind of in the midst of saying that like coaching and therapy are not the same thing, right? Like some people use, there's coaching, there's consulting, there's counseling, there's therapy.
Yes.
These things are all valuable.
Yes.
We need all of them at different
Yes.
points in our lives, but they're not the same thing. I have heard people say that there may be times as a coach when you come across kind of a touchy subject that might be more of a therapy subject. Is that something that you find you come up against with clients often at all?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Not necessarily like often, but yes, there definitely have been moments where for me on the other end, I recognize and realize that the things that are occurring on their end or what they really need is outside my realm, right, of expertise, training. And sometimes these things can go hand in hand. I would say specifically with mindset related things, right, that oftentimes that can maybe touch on either mental health related things, or maybe it has to do with some sort of trauma that's been experienced, right? And we all have these things in our life that we're having to journey. And so I think part of being an effective coach is knowing where to draw that line and say that this is not like for me to be able to dive into, and how can we get you connected with the right resource or the right person that can help you navigate that, effectively. Right. And so kind of knowing where your own limits are, I think is really important as a coach.
Right. And I feel like that's something that's going to connect with like the topic here at hand too, around content, right? Like part of the important thing about knowing who you are is knowing who you're not, right? And part of knowing and recognizing and building on what you can do is knowing the things that you can do, right? Or that you won't do or shouldn't do, and how you navigate around that. Can you tell us something about like when you're talking to people about kind of building their own brand, when they're using content to do that, how much time do you spend talking about this kind of identity thing of figuring out who you are and the yes and no of that?
Oh yeah. I mean, that's the huge part of it, right? I always tell people that is the starting point. We have to get clarity around essentially what you said, who we are, what we bring to the table. I always like to frame it with the question, what do you want to be known for? Right. And we have to do that deep inner work to really like assess that and to pull that out. Because once we have that piece, the strategy piece is kind of actually the easy part of all this, because it's just taking it, running with it. The deeper inner dive, that's the part that for each of us, it takes time, it takes energy, it takes a lot of effort, it takes reflection, it takes conversations, right? And so, that piece is crucial. And I would say, a lot of times, whether it's for job seekers or people looking simply to build their brand, that's the part they tend to skip over, and they want to just move straight into the strategy, which the strategy is awesome, but it's not going to be effective without doing the hard work.
Right. The bells and whistles get exciting. I mean, that's like marketing. Like marketing is just fascinating to me. Design work. Like, I mean, now there are so many tools that enable you to, look at what we can do on LinkedIn. Like you can really jump right into branding yourself, talking about who you are, creating content. But you can waste a lot of time too if you don't know who you are, where you're coming from, and where you're going. And I'm not saying I'm speaking from experience on any of that, but I might be.
I think we all are just a little bit. You're not alone there.
Right. And I mean, and a little bit of experimentation is good too, right? Like we do want to do that. I want to back up real quick. I saw 100%. Jacob dropped a pretty good question over here about, can a coach be a mentor and a mentor be a coach, or is there a difference there? What do you think about that, Katelyn?
I think it can be both and, right? I think that mentorship can have elements of coaching. At the end of the day, a lot of what coaching is it's drawing out what's already there internally. And I think that's something that good mentors will have a pulse on, right? Is knowing when to simply just kind of ask the questions and let you do that work of drawing that to the surface. But I do think an element of coaching is mentoring and being able to offer up some advice, some expertise, right? Some very tangible, practical, whether it be tips, strategies, exercises, whatever it might be, right? So, I mean, I would say those two things go hand in hand really well.
I think so too. I think that it was Brian Berman who he's going to be on the show in a few weeks, but he and I had a conversation a couple of months ago about this. And he was talking about the difference in coaching and consulting, and that consulting is you come to me with a problem and I'm going to tell you what to do, and then you go do it. Coaching is more, you need to figure this out. I can tell you things, but you're the ultimate authority on your own path. And you need to figure out that journey on your own. I can help you and be a companion to you. And I think that that's a lot of what mentoring does too. It's someone with the experience who can speak to you and help you kind of figure that out on your own. Well, not on your own, but figure it out for yourself in your own unique way.
Yes, exactly.
We were talking about how we've all done this thing where some content works better than others. Some of it ends up being a little bit experimental. In your own path, kind of doing this, what kind of things have you found with your content that were maybe more experimental and flopped, and what kind of worked, and just what was that journey like? Or what is it still like?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I dove into LinkedIn content creation. Hold on to do math. I mean, it was a little over 2 years ago now. It was back in like April of 2021. And I had been lurking on LinkedIn, I mean, for years. I mean, before this, I was a recruiter, right? I spent so much time on LinkedIn, mostly, just friendly stalking of people and candidates and consuming content, and then I started dabbling and doing a little bit of, liking and reacting. But when I really launched out with my own business and career coaching, I was like, okay, I've got to show up and use my voice, right? And so I kind of dove full force into the deep end when I went all in on content creation. I mean, I was posting every day, and I had no idea what I was doing. I mean, that's the real talk, right? But I think the thing that what has been most helpful for me, and people oftentimes are like, wait, what does this have to do with content creation? Was being really, really intentional with my newsfeed and who specifically I was following and what ultimately I was filling my feed with. I have found that the better trained my feed is, the better my content is. Because I think in the same way that, what's that saying? You're the sum of the 5 people you spend the most time with, right?
Yeah.
I think our LinkedIn content is a sum of the content that we are consuming and that we are interacting with and that we're commenting on, right? It is a place that then becomes this source of inspiration and where we get filled with ideas and we get energized. And so I always say the better your feed is, the better your content's going to be. And maybe that seems wacky because it doesn't necessarily have to do with like copywriting or, I don't know, the actual creation of the post itself. But I think there's a direct correlation. And so that's been one of the biggest things for me is who's showing up in my feed, who am I engaging with? When our feed starts to get a little wonky, am I taking that time to really go back and be intentional with what that's looking like? And it's just made my time on LinkedIn way more efficient too, which I think has then translated over into all content creation.
Wow. Yeah. No, I mean, this is a big life truth that we come up against, right? Like the old saying about that you're what you pointed out about you become like the people you spend time with. And we know with our bodies physically, like if you eat garbage, you're going to get unhealthy. If you eat healthy stuff, you're going to get more healthy. It's the same thing with our minds, and in this kind of age of crazy social media, and there are so many things out there that the options are limitless. If we can stop and be really intentional about what we're consuming, that's going to shape what's going on in here and in here, and that's going to shape what we put out. And I'm not sure that we pause often enough.
It's going to shape this.
Right. The fingers are being driven by the eyeballs, right? Like whether we realize it or not. So it's really good that you put a pin in that. So, everybody in the audience, write it down. Remember it. You are what you consume.
Train your feed.
Train your feed.
Yes, train
yourself.
your feed.
Well, you can train your feed, train your content.
Yes. I love that. I'm going to take that.
Yes, absolutely.
Good.
Put that. That'll be. I love the old thing people say. You've got yourself a post right there.
Yep. There we go. Yep. More content inspiration.
So do you have, when you're, sorry, I'm pausing to read comments here. Paul's hitting a good point right here. And this is exactly what we're talking about too, with how you're trained is if you go out on your own to make content, I know because I've done this, like you can spend a lot of time experimenting, you can do a lot of different things, and you can learn a lot that way. It's absolutely true. I know Chris Hennessy talks about this with live streaming, right? He coaches on people to do this. Like I've learned a lot of this by talking to people, by experimenting, by playing around. It's pretty time intensive. But if you hire a coach, they can help you kind of direct your time much more efficiently. And, like Paul says, like it's a really great accelerator. When you
love that, Paul.
Yeah, it's really good stuff. Katelyn, when you do work with your clients, what are the kind of things that you find you have to help them get past in order to move a little more quickly?
Yeah, I mean, the number one thing that I think every human comes up against when they're first diving into content creation is either this feeling of overwhelm of like, I don't even know where to begin. Here I am signing up for this, for the foreseeable future, I'm going to be creating content, right?
Daily.
I don't know how to do this. Yes, daily. I know. I don't know how to do this like efficiently, effectively. So there's the overwhelm. And then there's kind of that piece of it that feels really vulnerable, right? Like there's almost kind of that mindset piece that we have to get over, that hump of what are people going to think? Who's even going to respond to this, right? What are my current coworkers or past coworkers or, my aunt who's on LinkedIn, whatever it might be, right? What are people going to be thinking of me? So those are kind of the two biggest hurdles that I see for most people when they're starting out is number one, how do I kind of get over that fear of like the overwhelm of, wanting to make this something ideally that's sustainable for the long run, right? But it doesn't feel like it's going to be that. And then number two, how do I get over just literally the fear of hitting the post button? Because content creation is vulnerable. You are putting yourself out there in a very public way for people to engage with it and to respond to it, or to not engage with it. Like, I think that's probably actually the bigger fear that people have is like, is anyone even going to engage with this? And what's that going to mean? So yeah, those are kind of the two biggest things that I think we have to start with at the very beginning in order to create something that can be sustainable, that can be life-giving, right? That can, yes, be vulnerable, but also that vulnerability is then what leads to all of these good things in your career, like community and relationship and opportunities literally showing up in your inbox. It's crazy what can happen.
And the content provides this amazing chance to be vulnerable and to really show who you are. And vulnerability doesn't have to mean, it can mean different things for different people, right? Totally. I was having a conversation earlier where we were talking about the importance of using your content to push and to pull, right? That when you show who you really are, your personality will attract the right people for you to work with, and it will push away the wrong people. And we hear this drumbeat over and over on LinkedIn because it's true, like it's become cliche because it really holds up. And coaches find this too, right? I mean, don't you find that in your own content shows who you are, and then that draws the people who want to work with you and that you want to work with too, right?
1,000%. And I'll say when I started off, I was creating content to try to appeal to as many people as possible, right? It was so much more generalized. And here's the deal, like the types of people then that I was attracting weren't necessarily in alignment with me and the things I really believed in, right? Like I'm a little bit non-traditional of a career coach in terms that I have very strong opinions about resumes. And so, initially I just didn't really talk about resumes because I was like, oh, I'm scared I'm going to, repel people with this. But once I was finally willing to say, here are my thoughts and opinions, holy cow. Like that was when it was just such a light bulb moment for me, because then the people I was hearing from that were like, oh my gosh, I want to work with you, were people that there was then just that natural alignment. We were on the same page with some of the more like non-traditional job search strategies, right? Versus putting a lot of pressure on the resume to be the thing that was going to, land them interviews and all this good stuff. So yes, absolutely. We need to be repelling people. Wow. It's a good thing.
Yeah.
900 million people. We do not want to attract 900 million people on LinkedIn. Like they are not all our people.
Right. Well, I mean, think about even like impression counts. I mean, we talk about impressions a lot, but I mean, if you've got, a few thousand impressions on a post, like, do you want to try and work with a few thousand people? Like, no, you want some of those people to just move right along, right? I got to circle back. There's a great, we were talking about consulting, coaching. Sam had a really good question back here about separating the consulting and the coaching. What about it, Katelyn? Do you find that that's something that you have to kind of separate for yourself sometimes when you're working with people?
I think it's all about setting expectations up front with people that you're partnering with. So I have found that the more intentional I am about explaining, this is my role in this, this is what you can expect from our relationship from the get-go, that really helps. Because I mean, there are times where I feel like people think they want a coach, but what they really want is a consultant, like you named, to come in and solve the problem for them, right? And to just say, this is exactly what you need to do. And there will be times where I will offer up like, hey, here's my thoughts on this situation. And, if I were you, this is probably what I would do. But more often than not, right, it's my job to just keep asking the questions in terms of what is the best thing for them, because there's not a one size fits all when it comes to any of this, whether that's content creation, personal branding, job searching, interviewing, right? Like there can be best practices, but for every person, our career journey is unique. It looks a little different. And so I think setting those expectations up front is really, really helpful.
That's great. Yeah. I mean, communication, right? Like you have to communicate, especially in a relationships that's so personal and intimate, kind of as coaching is, right?
Yes. Oh, yes.
Kitty had a question on another one that I wanted to throw out here for you. How important is evergreen content? She said she believes it's important. I mean, it certainly has a place. What do you think about it, Katelyn?
I mean, all content on LinkedIn is evergreen. That's kind of the reality of putting content out there. I mean, I have content that I've posted a year and a half ago that I'll still get a notification that somehow someone found it and engaged with it and reacted to it or commented on it. People have the ability to go to your page and literally go as far back in time to your very first post and see what it is you were writing about. So, I think that it's the habit and the rhythm of content creation that is the most important. It is a habit that every single individual needs for their career. And I mean, I will die on that hill. And it is for this reason. It literally gives people a place to come and get to experience you outside of a two-dimensional resume and even outside of a two-dimensional LinkedIn profile, right? They get to really hear the inner, workings of what's going on up here in terms of how you approach problem solving, how you think about the world, the things you're passionate about, that you value. They just get this full 360-degree view. So yeah, in terms of content, I think all content on LinkedIn is evergreen. I mean, it's searchable. People can literally search keywords and your content will pop up from however long ago. And,
I think probably most of us have seen those moments where after you've been posting for a pretty long time, from time to time, you'll get that notification pop up that so-and-so commented on or so-and-so reacted to your post. And you go and you look at your post and you're like, I wrote that 5 months ago. How did they find that? So people are actually looking, like it happens. People are looking and finding these things.
Oh, yeah.
And they're finding value in it. So I like that you pointed out, resumes are very two-dimensional, they're very straightforward. So is your about section. Your about section is very similar to a resume in this kind of staticness of it. But when you think about your content is this living, breathing thing. Like it's constantly growing. You're constantly adding to it. So it really is three-dimensional, and it really does kind of go beyond all of that. We're getting kind of near the end of our time. Let me see if there's any quick more questions we got to, I think I see one that we ought to hit real quick. I also, Jeremiah, Susanna, glad you guys popped in here. Kitty, it was a great question. Thank you for that one. There's one more for Sam. Let's hit this one, and then we've got a few things to wrap up. What do you think about the hashtag? Where do hashtags fit in with content?
Yeah, I always tell my content creators when they're first starting off that I think hashtags are absolutely important and they're worth it. You know, the best practice for the algorithm is between 3 to 5. I think it's good to mix it up between some generalized hashtags that have a lot of people following them to getting all the way down to the potential for a personalized hashtag, right? Now you'll see like kind of a trend nowadays for maybe people that have a little bit larger of a following on LinkedIn, have been on LinkedIn for a while, is to not include hashtags, right? For whatever reason, that's, you know, kind of become a thing. And, you know, with LinkedIn, there will be fads that come and go. But, you know, a personalized hashtag cannot hurt. It's another way of really telling your story and capturing what it is that you want to be known for, right? And giving people simply another way to follow you, to find you, for you to show up on their feed if they're following that, right? These things can't hurt. So kind of like what you were saying earlier on, Nathan, like these are great things to experiment with, in my opinion, if that's something you want to do or not. I had one for a while, for a season. I don't actually use it anymore. But, you know, you do what works for you when it comes to the personalized hashtag. That's my thought.
Love it. And it's evergreen, right? Like
yes,
it's still out there. So you use it. That doesn't mean just because you stop doesn't mean that it's gone. Katelyn, I appreciate this conversation. I feel like we could keep going for, you know, another hour easy, but we're about at the end of time. So two things. One, tell us what's the best way for people to get in touch with you if they need to?
Yes, please shoot me a message on LinkedIn. That is where I hang out. That is where I spend my time. I would love to connect with any of y'all. Just shoot me a DM or an email or whatever. Would love to just get to know you, get to know your story. But yes, LinkedIn is the best place to find me.
Awesome. And towards the end of the show, I always try and give a spot for our guest to share with us some little nugget of wisdom. If you can give us, you know, maybe a little minute-ish kind of golden nugget, it can be advice, it can be whatever you'd like to share with us, just something that you really want us to take away from this. And I'm going to let you have the whole screen for this, all right? So it's all yours.
Love it. The biggest piece of advice that I love to give people is that your voice matters. And there's no one else on LinkedIn, anywhere else in the world, but 900 million people on LinkedIn that have your combination of background, experience, story, strengths, skill sets, whatever it might be. And so I think it's easy sometimes to feel like our voice is just another one in a sea of voices, but your perspective and your take on whatever topic it is that you want to write about, no one else has it. So please, please, please use your voice because it matters. And there's going to be other people out there that will uniquely resonate with what you have to say and the way that you're going to say it in a way that they would not resonate with any other content creator on LinkedIn. So like I said, this is a hill I will die on because I really do believe that every person should be showing up and creating content and using their voice. So your voice matters. That's the advice. Hopefully that was like around a minute.
However long it was perfect. I saw Rebecca in the chat earlier. I have to give her a shout out and throw out a quote from Hamilton. That part of the lesson there is, don't throw away your shots. Right? Like, this is your chance to do something, do it. Katelyn's got solid advice. You guys think of it, remember it. And that's it for today. Everybody, thank you so much for being here. Katelyn, I appreciate you. I appreciate all of the energy, all of the wisdom you brought to us today. Everybody, be sure to tune back in next Wednesday. Lindsay Parkle will be here. It's going to be another great conversation. And I hope all of you have a wonderful rest of your Wednesday.
That's right. Thanks, Nathan.
Thanks.